I'm Dr. Anthony Eiton, and I'm pleased to present to you Together We Rise. This is a three-part documentary about everyday people working together to build power to improve the health of their communities. It's part of our Building Healthy Communities initiative, which is designed to connect health to our democratic social compact. We hope you enjoy it.
It's lunchtime at San Diego's Crawford High School, but unlike the food previous generations had to choose from, the food in this cafeteria could be featured on the Food Network. So what's cooking at Crawford? Their one-of-a-kind, free-range, antibiotic, hormone-free chili lime chicken bowl. School lunch chicken doesn't get any healthier. We can tell you exactly how it's made, what free-range farm it came from, and why it's attracted national attention. But this isn't a story about chicken. This is a story about how a small group of students and community members found their own power and changed the way lunch is served in the second largest school district in California.
My son used to go language academic, so one day he came home and tired. I prepared food, I told him to come and eat. He said, I don't have energy to come and sit and eat.
Usually when I go to work, I always prepare them like yogurt drink because I'm not in the house. And that day I said, oh, maybe I can feed her at school. And then when I went to school, there is nothing to eat for her.
أنا هاد قرافرة ويل إيه دكتا ويل كيجا هاي لو ويلا إيجا بح مدا إيجا بح متك كلنا ودكتا مالن وحكينا إن أنت أي بن بقونين بق وحد دقن كذي وحيتا السجى الصبح سان 7 وجيو أو حنكسر وذا after school وسيجلايا بحنكسر وذا 6 o'clock السجى نفع مركو جلاس كسا وقصة بحايا أنا جا عنت سوق بناي مينس إنه أوي وحيرة أصاد دمن إنه أوي وحيرة دمن مركز ولا هاي أنت مكرسي هاي أنت مكرسي هاي محكرسي هاي أنت يقول سجار هاي إلى سوق sometimes عاجا وقصة شو باوركو كعناده كورجي مجارسين كرده.
We wanted to find a product that was something we could cook from scratch. A raw product, we found the Mary's chicken drumstick that was halal, that they had prepared one day a week, and be able to provide the volume of the halal chicken drumsticks that we needed to create this chili lime chicken bowl. And so we got together with the students on the campus, and we actually ended up doing a taste test after a year and a half of searching for a product, understanding what the people in this community wanted to eat, and the students really liked it.
Actually, our whole class was involved, and we would get into like smaller groups, and we'd go around classes and advisories of younger classmen and tell them about this new halal chicken option. Everybody was just so excited for it.
We're in a food desert, meaning that we didn't have a lot of access to like markets that had fresh produce, and that caught my attention because, you know, I realized that it's a need for a lot of people, and a lot of people are afraid to speak up like, oh, this is what my community needs.
The reality is the people who are facing food insecurity, if they can start to get organized and to mobilize and make their voice heard and build that power and participate in our process, that's the way that we go about attacking issues like food insecurity.
So realizing, especially kids that are food insecure or that are on free and reduced, potentially breakfast and lunch are perhaps the only meals they get. The halal bowl is actually very nutritious. And the great news, it meets the dietary guidelines for every student at Crawford. So the actual bowl has 422 calories. It's about 29% from calories from fat and less than 10% in saturated fat.
What did we set out to do? What were our goals? When we first started this campaign,
we're like a tool, you know? We were able to give the guidance and some of the structure to learn the process of organizing in a formal way. It's about the process, about them learning it so that, you know, whatever happens, they keep that and they know how to make changes beyond, you know, Mid-City can.
We actually listened, and the next time we got it, it was actually way better.
It's really about knowing people. It's about that relationship, knowing people and knowing where their strengths are and putting those folks in a place where they can let loose those strengths. One, to speak up, to tell their story was important. English is like their more like third, fourth, or fifth language. So it's really intimidating, and a lot of times their voice isn't heard anyways or respected. But they knew that they needed to say something, because if no one says something, then it doesn't change, and they've already experienced that for years and years and years.
Yeah, I think it gave other people hope, and then it builds power, and
yeah,
people know us now.
Well, I learned that by gathering your community and getting people to actually get involved, you can initiate change, social change, food change, anything you want if you get people organized and ready to fight for a cause, you know.
It showed me how to be a leader and how to be a mentor for the kids that are younger than me, and that they actually are looking up to us and that our voices are actually being heard, and to fight for what you want and what's right.
Wherever you're going, you operate with a certain integrity or a certain mindset of knowing that, you know, you have power, and people who maybe aren't always listened to, they have wisdom. Everyone has wisdom, and they all have power. These youth, you know, that are going off, some are going to college, some are going to other places in life. I think they're going to hold that with them regardless, you know? And I could see like Guadalupe becoming like a community organizer if she wants to, or something else, but always operating with that sense of, you know, if you don't talk to the folks, you know, who are most affected, then you're going to miss something. She told me that she liked being on the food justice team because, you know, and that we're encouraging people to speak up.
It's just like touching for me. Cause yeah, I mean, I think it all like connects to like personal things in different ways.
At school, I only eat halal chicken because it is the only meal that is vegetarian fed, antibiotic free, cooked fresh, and healthy.
This is so much more than a conversation about food.
This is a huge step towards inclusion, equality, and overall togetherness.
When we heard the voices from the community of what they wanted around the halal chicken program, for example, listening to the voices of the kids and wondering, could they really make this happen? And we're saying, why can't you? We always say, dream big, make something happen. So watching that gain momentum and watching the kids come to the board meeting and tell their story, and watching the parents actually realizing that a large system is going to listen to them and their voice matters, that's an inspirational moment.
Yeah, I was worried when I went there, if they accept or not. I was praying there, Allah. Yeah, when they say yes, so there was heavy things on my chest that take away.
This has been an incredible success for us at the school district, because what we've seen is the participation rates of kids, you know, eating school breakfast, school lunches has really gone up.
Probably the greatest lesson I learned is that if we gather a community and work together, we can make change.
I also learned how much my community needs help, and not only did I do the halal chicken, but after that, like, I helped Miss Laurel with other stuff.
The next step for me is to have halal food for all unified schools, for all children.
And wiilashii Afrikaanka ahaa ee lahaa toos kac ilaa aad waxaaga hesho ha daalin hana ka fadhiisanin inaad dhimato mooyaane. Taa aad baan u aaminsanahay. Sida Bob Marley oo kale, kac, istaag, xaqaaga raadso ilaa aad hesho ha ka daalin inaad dhimato mooyaane.
walk lao kema canoe mao. I Coselasan keatna skui saw sec. I Coselasan keatna skui saw ha letma. I Coselasan keatna skui tween kepa. I
In 1851, the governor of California declared to exterminate all California Indians. So he and McDougal, next governor, appropriated $1.7 million to exterminate all California Indians. And so everybody who had a rifle and a horse went out and just started massacring Indians, and they got paid for it.
I really didn't have a very good experience with education, and fairly regularly I didn't go to school. When I came home, walked into the house one day, my mother and her sisters are arguing about something, I don't know, some petty thing. But it was a petty thing that happened at boarding school. And I had never heard about boarding school, ever, from any of them. And all of them had been to boarding school together. And so what you have then is my mother's refusal or disinterest in sending me to school came out of her boarding school experience, which they did not want to discuss, period. When old Indian ladies don't want to discuss something, you can throw a bomb in there and you're not going to make them discuss it.
So they would come and capture the children and take them and send them away, and they'd be gone up to 12 years. So they'd leave, be taken around 4 to 6 years old by force, sent away until they were 17, 18 years old, and they'd be sent back, if they made it back at all. That was probably one of the hugest breaks in culture and tradition and language, because they forced us to be apart. You know, and you came back and your grandma's talking to you in full-on Dane-Eat, and they're going like, I love you, I respect you, but I can't hear what you're saying, you know what I mean? So we had a lot of sociological problems develop out of that. And the institution's philosophy was, kill the Indian to save the man. That's John Burke's philosophy. So they had to eradicate who we were and re-social and culturalize us into an American, right? So it was pretty brutal.
As a filmmaker commissioned by the California Endowment to spotlight stories in its Building Healthy Communities initiative, I was drawn to this beautiful place where Native Americans have fought for centuries to reclaim their traditions, language, and power, and most recently, join others to transform the education system.
In order to get food, you had to comply with what the Bureau told you to do. So if you wanted to get your delivery of food, you would have to say, yes, I'll send my children to school. So, you know, those things were all tied together. So that does not create a real good sense in grown-ups about, let's send our children to school.
Kich Laya Lumek, Kumi Skewa Ki Kesaga. Kichi Rakana Kuma. Again?
So one way we can give students a buy-in is show them something that they yearn for or that their family does, and you give them like, wow, I can really come to school and actually see part of like my culture being represented here. Because for a lot of times kids, they never see that.
You're going to be a Aikui Nick Nelson Daniel. School in Sunday Peck, I feel good. School in Sunday Pim. How you feeling?
Because other people, when they're just born here, and they're just white, they're always in touch with their culture because it's always around them. But with us losing so much of our language and having to recreate a lot of it, we're not as in touch with our culture. And a lot of the young people don't just get in touch with it, like me. Flynn's probably been in touch with his a lot longer than me. I just kind of recently got into it because of the Tollywood class, and I regret not doing it sooner. It was so much fun.
Without the language, we're nothing.
For generations, a lot of our families
have felt excluded from the public education system, and the curriculum has not really embraced the American Indian community or the Yurok community.
And you look historically back in the past, education was devastating to the Native American communities. There's a lot of distrust that sense carries forward, and there's this deep pain there. So when you look at a class like the Yurok language or the Tolowa language, now we have a place for kids to, one, feel, hey, my culture has some value because it's in the schools. But beyond that, you saw kids in the classroom that were not Native American also. So that probably wouldn't have happened 30 years ago. It would have been a class for Native American students to be a part of. And when I walk in there, I see students now that have a genuine interest in cultures and language. We have about 20% Hispanic.
Language was what first brought me to this story, and its potential to unlock a people's power. The language classes at Del Norte High School are an exemplary case study of what can happen when students, parents, teachers, and administrators work together to address a history of inequity in education.
2 years ago, the AG did a report on elementary truancy. One of the highest truancy rates is Margaret Keating. I can see because I know what school, what it is. And I'm like, how am I supposed to run a country with 11-year-old dropouts? You can't do that anymore. It doesn't work.
We have substandard schools in the test scores, in our graduation rates, in how many kids can get into universities.
Members of the Klamath Local Organizing Committee wanted to address the inequities at the Margaret Keating Elementary School. Systemically, student achievements were very low. The families felt ignored by the district. The school had no internet as late as 2015. We had low attendance and very, very high suspension rates among our kindergarten through 5th grade.
As parents, we know that if I don't lay him a good foundation now, I'm gonna have a high schooler who just doesn't care because no one has cared so far. It's just another barrier in front of our kids. Margaret Keating does not have Yurok language. We're on the Yurok reservation. There's 3 schools on the Yurok reservation and one of them doesn't have Yurok language. That's a problem. We should be teaching that. We need to give our kids the tools they need to be successful in the Indian community and in school.
So we launched True North. It wasn't called that then, but we launched community organizing in this community through BHC in the early days of the initiative. Because we knew that to make long-term equity change, we would need to have the people most affected by the problem, the people closest to the pain, be actively engaged in creating the solutions. We chose the PICO organizing model as the model to implement here locally because we believed that there was power in residents coming together around their shared values. So we hired community organizers and we organized in neighborhoods and we used schools as the anchor organizations in the early days of the work.
True North gave us that ability to go in and say this, we want our education system to be different. They gave us an opportunity. We went and met with the school superintendent, we met with the tribal leaders, we met with teachers, we met with the union representative. We met with all of those people and we said, what would you do? Could you help us to make this a better place? And a lot of what we heard was the families are not engaged with their students. So I said, what if we could solve that? What if we worked on something to solve that together?
So True North had a meeting in Oregon in 2015 in February where over 200 people came from Del Norte and Coastal and Eastern Humboldt.
Jimmy McQuillan, you have said yes. Steve Godley, you have said yes. Amber Cron, you have said yes. So I was able to do that and then say, and now those administrators can't do it by themselves. I want every parent in this room to say they're going to be part of this. If you believe it, stand up. It was great. It was amazing.
People who hadn't participated in the democratic process, like disenfranchised youth at the alternative high school or undocumented moms out in Smith River, they were engaged in a public process where they asked for change from policymakers.
So for me, an immediate win would look like, for one, the school acknowledging that Klamath matters, that our kids matter, that we matter, and that they've heard our voice. Because as to date, we have not even felt, we asked to be on the school board agenda this last round, and the superintendent denied us because he said he felt that their technology person was doing the best that he could do, and so we didn't even get added to the agenda.
I think the root of a lot of the criticism that happens, it's not criticism per se. What it is an impatience for change. Because like I said, this has been a long time in coming. There's been generations of our families that have wanted to see something different for their children because they wanted it to be different from what it was when they were here. And that goes back to the generational trauma. It goes back to our immigrant families. It goes back to a lot of different things. What we really want to focus on is we don't want to flash in the pan. I don't want 5 or 10 years of the work that our district has done or with BHC or with outside agencies to come and go because a process comes and goes. I want us to be able to have a sustainability plan. I want us to internalize it. I want it to transform, reshape, retool, and become part of the culture of what happens here.
And I think the biggest impact that had, and what I heard over and over people saying they'd never seen before, is that level of mutual support. Like, we all want the same thing. And this is a process where we can realize, put aside that cycle of blame and figure out how to work this together.
I have a lot of confidence in our young people. And I think if we can convince them that the way that we've done it is wrong and that they can do it right, and that education and the ability to communicate is what we all need, you know, I'm hopeful that they can do that, and I think they can. And I think that's why concentrating on the schools is really important.
I just sing songs, like my dad said, songs will just start coming to you, son.
The Salinas Valley is known as the salad bowl of the world. But beyond its lettuce fields, this small California town is also known for its art, culture, and its people. Particularly in East Salinas, or Alisal as it's known, where generations of proud families have created a true community, a common unity. But the lesser-known story is how the community thrives despite sometimes brutal living conditions here. Over a 4-month period in 2014, there were 4 police-involved shooting deaths of 4 men in the community.
This is one of the most populated spaces in East Salinas. It's so densely packed here, mostly with farm worker families. He fell right here. After he was shot, they flipped the body over and handcuffed him. So they handcuffed the dead body, left it here for about an hour, very near the time that school was out. So all this block was filled with people and children that got to see this uncovered body.
Time to take accountability for these actions that, you know, our police officers are taking.
Yes, we do have a gang problem, and they're dressed in blue, and they have badges, and they're called the Salinas Police Department.
The chief said this investigation is far from over and addressing concerns that Salinas police are investigating their own. The chief said any completed investigation will be forwarded to the district attorney's office, the FBI, and Department of Justice.
What do communities, black and brown communities, do with the anger that comes as a result of so much oppression, and particularly at the hands of the police? In an ideal society, we would have a place at the table where we can engage with the city to collaborate. But when we do not have that, we gotta go out to the streets and protest in a peaceful way. But more than anything, what we gotta do is heal ourselves.
Desde la antigüedad, los indígenas se han sentado en círculo para escuchar, guiar, enseñar, orar y sanar sus comunidades.
About 30 years ago, a group of us men, Chicano, Latino, Native men, we got together, began talking, and we were very frustrated. We were very kind of overwhelmed by what we were seeing going on in the community. We saw a lot of grief, we saw a lot of violence, we saw a lot of distress, and we didn't see that what the system was doing was helping at all. So we went around and we asked people, just share who you are, what's your intention for being here? And so, people began sharing. By the time we got to the third brother in, he was sharing who he was, and he says, I'm here like a lot of you to help my community. He says, but what's really on my mind is my own kids and my own family. That I've been working so much in the street and protesting and marching and trying to develop stuff and working for the community that I don't even know my kids. My wife wants to divorce me, and I've been drinking too much, and I'm all jacked up. And he began to cry. And as he began to speak this truth about his wounds, he began to cry and open up. It touched something in all of us. And it changed and shifted the energy of that circle. And as he shared, then the next brother shared, and the next brother shared. And what happened is all of us began to share about the personal distress, the personal wounds that we didn't understand at the time, were residual effects of so many generations of oppression, so many generations of racism, so many generations of stress. And so what we realized as we sat there amongst each other is that we were all messed up. And that we realized that the first order of business before we could help anybody is we needed to work on healing ourselves. We have then taken that medicine, that tradition of gathering in circles to heal and to strengthen and to refocus, and spread that medicine all across this country.
Healing in itself is a big concept that is beyond most of our grasp and understanding. However, we do the best to approach it in a way that's positive and respectful, and take it to think, at least in my terms and in my lens, and through like our generation, more of a very sacred process, but that's really restructuring and restoring one's true identity, really doctoring up the internal dialogue and thinking that we have going on, and decolonizing ourselves and reprogramming to ourselves in a way that's good for our health, good for our families, good for our cultural identity.
And the hardest thing I've ever had to do is sit in a circle and be real with other men and other individuals. When I first paroled from Folsom, first thing I did was a brother took me to and I tell this story often, that the first place he wanted to take me was the Círculo de Hombres that was in my neighborhood. And I didn't know what this was about. When we circled up as men, we're used to doing it a certain way. Frankly, when I sat there and I saw these men talking like we did right now, when we're talking about our mothers, we're honoring, women and respecting elders and protecting children, all these kind of concepts. And, what are we going to do for our community? And what about myself and my own cargas and what I'm bringing, right? And I'm hurting my family or whatever. And just everything comes out in the circle. To be real and authentic in the circle. And I remember sitting there and this being so foreign to me, right? That I sat there and I said, man, these dudes are weird, right? I actually leaned over to my friend and said, these vatos are weird, bro. And he says, nah, brother, that's the way we're supposed to be.
To hear some of these men sharing about the things that they were sharing, to me, it was like, oh man, I can't believe you just said that. And then when it got to me, it was kind of like, boom, like we were talking about, like that medicine just hit you, like it just hit me. Next thing I knew, I was like, bleh, like verbal vomit of like everything that I had inside of me that I couldn't get out. And that helped like that much. to decompress a little bit. It helped bring me to a point to where now I know if I'm feeling a certain type of way, or like if I'm starting to get angry or whatever, I have somewhere that I can go and I could talk about that, and or I could go and like I could pray, because spirituality and stuff was something that was like, I didn't want to be a Catholic, you know, nothing against like anybody's religion or anything like that. I had a real disconnect, you know, so to have that connection made, it was a trip to like really go back to that and to start evaluating like, oh crap, this happened right here at this point in time in my life, and that I responded to it like this. Really that cultura cura and being able to be trained as a Joven Noble facilitator and being able to sit and share space with some of these youth, our community circles, like I always tell everybody, like, it's not about me, really. I'm just the individual that's been designated as, like, the circle keeper, if you will. But I get as much medicine from them as they may feel that they get from me. And it's really, like, that's, like, my weekly... I'm a husband. I'm a father. But I'm also an individual that comes from, like, a checkered past. The power of the circle for myself is, like, there's not one person standing, talking down to you. Even like the way you lay the foundation of like, I'm passing it to my left right now because I want to give you the best of me. I want to give you my heart and have everybody around the circle understanding that we're equal in this. And while we don't have the same shared experience, we have a lot more that makes us family and makes us familiar than makes us not.
There's a big part of doing Círculos that is interconnection with everybody. Once you share a story of who you are, they see beyond your physical appearance and what you bring. For us that facilitate Círculos, it's a lifestyle that we embrace. I share my story, but not from a perspective of feeling traumatized, but more as resiliency, what helped me move from that stage. I know that those traumatic moments are not gonna go away, but it's uplifting the tools that I have to provide for the community.
I was in solitary confinement for over 14 years. I did 15 years, 8 months. I was there in Pelican Bay Shoe, branded as a prison gang member. When we speak of healing, I think this is probably the only thing that can reach down and I can feel. It's just something that I come over here and I just got blessed up right now with the red-tailed hawk. I've never believed in anything in my life, but with this is something that I can relate to, and I've embraced it. It works for me.
You hear these comments about like, know thyself, to thine own self be true, but we don't get identity development in our Western kind of settings that we're in. If anything, we're told we're inadequate or it's inappropriate the way we show up. Loving yourself in a society that teaches you to hate yourself is a revolutionary act, and that's what we're doing, raising revolutionaries.
I don't think that healing is that far away. It's not that foreign because it's already in us. And once we begin to be that example, once we take our circles of healing outside of designated areas and designated places and introduce them to the school, the educational system, introduce them to all the institutions inside a community, I believe that we can start healing.
Unless we deal with the structural inequities and the structural problems that we have, we're not going to be able to resolve this because it's going to be a Band-Aid after another Band-Aid. And so even if you remove the police officer or whatever it is that you try to do to avoid the situation, it's not going to happen because it's bigger than that. The problem is way bigger than that.
So typically it's going to be a commander. I'll show you the briefing.
Were they lawful? Yes. Were they justifiable? Yes. Were they okay? Are we happy that it happened? Did those guys deserve to die? Did they get what they had coming to them? No, of course not. Nobody deserves to die like that. Nobody should. The tasers might have worked. That would have been helpful. Would have been helpful if these guys hadn't have done what they did. A million things could have changed in every scenario to have a different outcome. They didn't. That's where we are today. And it's tragic. It's tragic for the guys who were killed. It's tragic for their families. It's tragic for the officers who were involved. Justifiable shootings, taking a human life, no matter how justified it is not an easy thing to do. And we are, at the end of the day, human beings. We're not robots, and so it affects us. It affects everybody. Clearly affected the community.
When the California Endowment chose the 14 communities to partner in this 10-year Healthy Communities Initiative, we had to understand that the people who had the answers to the solutions that were plaguing our communities were those with a direct lived experience, those closest to the inequities. In order to support their leadership development, we also have to cultivate a culture of healing because of the trauma that they've had to endure.
The GRE training was really about bringing together two approaches to making change. One approach is the trauma and healing informed approach, and then the other is our approach to making systems be racially equitable. What we really wanted to do with the training is to establish in the city of Salinas, among its residents and among its city government, a common set of ideas about what it means to be racially fair, to have a racially just community and government. We have trained people in public agencies, and we have trained community members and organizers and advocates, but we have rarely trained both sets of people in the same room together.
So what Renko and Race Forward presented was a systemic look on how to deal with racial equity. Different than just diversity training, different than just being equal, different than some of the things I had been exposed to. So I was very impressed. So we had a frank discussion afterwards with key members of the leadership team of BHC. That session of training led us to a place where we could be frank and a little more direct and vulnerable about what we felt and what we think needed to be done. And we came away from that meeting agreeing we need to do more of this. We need to do it in Salinas. City government needs to do this. The community needs to do this. We need to figure out how we can do it together.
I walked in a little apprehensive, particularly given the current environment and the current attitude towards law enforcement. You know, I was wondering if I was walking into a trap.
For us to be able to have that space, that outlet to talk about some of these things, some of our experiences and stuff, it was cool. And to have it like really like the city officials, or they were doing their GRE work while we're doing our GRE work, and it kind of felt like, you know, we're gearing up to go to war.
So we did, the first day of training was was all city, so police officers, public works, the engineers. Second day was all community. We didn't have anything to do with that. And the third day they brought everybody together over here at Hartnell Junior College. And I walked in with a group of my guys, probably 6, 7, 8 cops all walking in together.
And when we came into that space, I remember like walking through the door, and it felt like I was walking onto a yard. Like I didn't know what was gonna crack. I didn't know what was gonna happen. I gravitate towards my people because of that, you know, safety in numbers type of thing.
And so you walk in, and as everybody does, not just police officers, when they scan the room. I remember thinking, oh God, I don't want to be at the table with that guy. This guy's gonna piss me off. I can tell you right now, he hates cops, and he's gonna piss me off. And guess what? He ended up at my table.
They're like, you guys are all split up. You're gonna sit in different tables. We've assigned people to sit in different tables. So we start going around and looking at the name tags and stuff, like who's sitting at my table. I see Chief McMillan at my table. I'm like, oh, hell no.
Skinny, ponytail, all stamped up, teardrops.
White, black, Native American?
No, it was Latino.
Okay.
Right. There's just something about him and he turned out to be the coolest kid, one of the most articulate young men I had ever met. And it was such a direct slap in the face about implicit bias. That was the aha moment.
It was my opportunity to present him and to provide him with a different perspective of what individuals like myself consist of. And we had a little activity that was like, who are you? We went through it, and I had the opportunity to tell him, I believe I told him, you know, I'm the one who broke into your car. I'm the one who broke into your house. I'm the one who shot such and such. I'm also the one that got shot. You know, I'm the one that got robbed. I'm the one whose daughter's mother is buried. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm pain. I'm anger, I'm shame. And I remember him looking at me like, wow, like he didn't expect all that to come out. And he started like tearing up, and he started talking like, well, I'm a man too, you know, and then he just started talking like, I don't know what to do. So it was humbling for myself.
That was just an absolute, no question about it. This is what they mean by implicit bias. I made an immediate assessment about this guy that was almost 100% incorrect. And it took just within an hour I had warmed up to him, and like I could hang out with this guy forever because he was articulate, he had something to say, wasn't angry, didn't have a chip on his shoulder.
But you assumed that he wasn't articulate and he had a chip on his shoulder.
Oh yeah,
and he
yeah.
was angry.
Yeah, that he wanted nothing to do but bash the cops, and he was like, no, I want to learn.
I had been prepared enough through the healing process to kind of like understand like my experiences, the way I feel at times towards that department or towards that uniform, towards that badge, whatever. I never had an interaction with this man, you know, so twofold. He could say, I've had these experiences with these people, it's a conversation we had too, but I didn't do anything to him. I never ran from him. I never tried to do anything, you know, so it was kind of like, all right, I'm gonna take this as this is a man right here. Taking off all the jackets and hats and boom, we're men. But at the same time, we're men that are coming from two different experiences, two different walks of life. And if this GRE training is really what it's cracked up to be, we're gonna be able to say some of those realities right now and try to come up with some type of suggested solutions or a plan for action, I don't know, or maybe even just leave with an understanding.
Those that have gone through the healing have a greater opportunity of connecting with people and moving things than those that haven't.
The power of the circle is both ancestral, contemporary, and into the future. Because all of the people that live here in California, particularly indigenous people who came here from Mexico or who were here before the United States borders changed, African Americans and other people of African descent who've come here, we're all one circle of family. Unfortunately, our family has been oppressed, our family has been harassed by systems that demonstrate structural racism here in California. And so when we get together and do circle, when we get together to heal, we're creating in ourselves the energy, the compassion, the empathy, the possibilities of what California really ought to be, what the United States really ought to be, what the world really ought to be. And I think that when we do good healing work in a variety of ways, when we do healing circles, when we sing together, when we drum together, when we pray together, when we cry together, that's going to bring us closer in relationship. And those relationships, in my opinion, are what build the political will, what build the possibilities of changing laws in this state, of changing city ordinances, of changing conditions in juvenile hall, changing conditions in county jails.
It's our responsibility to take care of our community. And if we're looking for other people to do it, they aren't going to do it. The more we divide, the weaker we become. You break off each of my fingers real easy, but you can't break this off very easy because my fingers are bound. And so we need to bind our fingers. So when people say black power, this means collective power. Brown power, collective power. Human power, collective power. And as long as we operate like this, we're going to use snap, snap, snap. You just take my hand and break my fingers. But you can't break this, you got to pry them apart.
But in that circle, you also hear other stories of men that are older and younger and get these reflections. And in that process, that medicine process of hearing these reflections, sometimes you see your father in the reflection of another man. And you see that story that question answered that you wish you could have asked your father. You see these legacies of shame that you see grandfathers feel, and you begin to understand why. And somehow in that ceremony of those stories and those reflections, tears begin to come. And you know, I cried tears many times when I'm telling stories. And you know, if a therapist would see me and say, I need more therapy. But a medicine man told you, no, you don't need more therapy, because those tears that you're crying, those aren't your tears. Those are your daddy's tears. Those are your grandfather's tears. Those are your great-grandfather's tears that could never cry. You have 3-4 generations of pain in you The choice is, are you ready to heal? Not just for you, but for your daddy and your grandmother and your grandfather and your great-grandmother and your great-grandfather. So we have the power as an individual sometimes to heal for generations. And when I see these youngsters sometimes tattooed, bald head fronting up, think they're all hard and all of that, and I say to you, really want to be a warrior, then take this battle on. Heal for your people, shed for your people, release for your people, so you don't carry that wound on to your little boy, your little girl. Are you willing to step and stand up with us? And it's amazing what happens when you give people the opportunity to step into their authentic self, into their sacred self, and you give them a way, and you bless them up, and you love them up, and you say, even when you fall, I'm gonna be down there with you, I'm not giving up, and you give them a community to belong in. It's amazing how they step forward.